Selamünaleyküm everyone. Welcome to another Quran study. Today we are going to read from Surah 59, verse 8, inshallah. Let's all seek refuge in God from Satan the rejected. Euzu billahi mineşşeytanirracim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. 8. You shall give to the needy who immigrated. They were evicted from their homes and deprived of their properties, because they sought God's grace and pleasure, and because they supported God and His Messenger. They are the truthful. So, this verse actually talks about a very important topic for us. It talks about people who were forced to leave their homes and lost everything they had because of their faith and devotion to God. They left because they were dedicated to pleasing God and supporting His message. So they gave up their homes and properties for God. And God says these people are truthful, you know. So this means that they stayed sincere and loyal to their beliefs, even when life became really hard. So they showed courage and faith, even when it cost them everything. So, this verse also reminds us that we should help believers in situations like this. It tells us to be generous and support those who have lost things in the cause of God. And also, helping them isn't just about giving money or food, you know, it is also about standing with them and showing kindness towards them. When we force ourselves to be with the believers, uh, God will help us in any way. So it's a Quranic law that we should be generous and kind toward the believers, and we should help them when they are in a difficult situation. Verse 9. As for those who provided them with a home and a refuge and were believers before them, they love those who immigrated to them and find no hesitation in their hearts in helping them. In fact, they readily give them priority over themselves, even when they themselves need what they give away. Indeed, those who overcome their natural stinginess are the successful ones. So, believers know that when they give money or something to the needy or people who immigrated to them, they will receive their rewards multiplied manifold. You know, God will eventually give them more. So, as believers, we are told that we shouldn't be stingy. And God says here, they love those who immigrated to them. So, believers love each other and respect each other. And God also says that they readily give them priority over themselves, even when they themselves need what they give away. So, this reminds me a verse about the real family. You know, in Surah 49, verse 10, God says that the believers are members of one family. You shall keep the peace within your family and reverence God that you may attain mercy. So that means when a believer who are evicted from his home immigrated to us, we should provide them a home and a refuge, like he is our genetic brother. You know, if our genetic brother is in trouble, we just go and help him without hesitation. Because believers are the real family, we should do the same thing towards our brothers and sisters in faith. Verse 10. Those who became believers after them say, Our Lord, forgive us, and our brethren who preceded us to the faith, and keep our hearts from harboring any hatred towards those who believed. Our Lord, you are compassionate, most merciful. So this verse, in a way, says that we shouldn't be selfish. You know, we shouldn't ask forgiveness only for ourselves, but we should ask also forgiveness for other believers too. You know, in this way, we keep peace within our community. So this will help us be more compassionate towards believers. And also, God says that we shouldn't harbor any hatred towards believers. Otherwise, it may create divisions, or conflicts, which are something Satan likes. As you all know, Satan tries to drive a wedge between believers so that he can distract people from worshiping God alone. Okay, let's continue, inshallah. Verse 11. Have you noted those who are plagued with hypocrisy, and how they said to their companion in disbelief among the people of the scripture, if you are evicted, we will go out with you and will never obey anyone who opposes you. If anyone fights you, we will fight on your side. God bears witness that they are liars. In fact, if they were evicted, they wouldn't have gone out with them. And if anyone fought them, they wouldn't have supported them. Even if they supported them, they would have turned around and fled. They could never win. Indeed, you strike more terror in their hearts than their fear of God. This is because they are people who do not comprehend. They do not get together to fight you unless they are in well shielded buildings or behind walls. Their might appears formidable among themselves. You would think that they are united, when in fact their hearts are divided. This is because they are people who do not understand. Their fate is the same as their counterparts who preceded them. They suffered the consequences of their decisions. They have incurred a painful retribution. They are like the devil. He says to the human being, disbelieve. Then, as soon as he disbelieves, he says, I disown you. I fear God, Lord of the universe. The destiny for both of them is the hellfire, wherein they abide forever. This is the requital for the transgressors. So we learn from these verses that the hypocrites are real enemies. And even among themselves, they don't trust each other and they just tell lies. So uh, they may make empty promises of support and loyalty, but their actions reveal the truth about their character. So God reveals that their words are lies and their actions wouldn't match their promises if faced with real challenges. So there are people who are scared of believers, and they are not willing to fight towards believers because they are not united. So it's very important to learn hypocrites' traits because if we learn them, we can avoid them and we can avoid to be like them. So God says the hypocrites claim that they will stand by their friends and even promising to fight alongside them if needed. But God testifies that they are actually liars. So when real challenges come, like wars or something like that, they wouldn't keep their words. So they instead would abandon people they promised to help. So that means hard situations expose hypocrites. And also, as I said, these people are described as more afraid of their enemies than God. So, despite their appearances, uh, actually their fear makes them weak. So, when danger comes, they simply seek shelter behind walls rather than facing challenges directly. Of course, this shows their lack of true strength and faith. Also, God says that they are like the devil in verse 16. They abandon people, and when a person follows their lead, they turn away and abandon these people, like Satan. So, what we learn from these verses is that we should be sincere, and when we encounter a real challenge, we should definitely be with the believers. Everyone is with you on a good day. But when hard situations come, real believers reveal their character by being brave and sincere. And we also learn that we shouldn't fear. If we are with God, God will definitely save us. Uh, you know, Remember Moses and his people uh, had nowhere to run anymore. But God saved them by parting the sea, which shows that God will save believers no matter which situation they are in. Okay, let's continue, inshallah. Verse 18. O you who believe, you shall reverence God, and let every soul examine what it has sent ahead for tomorrow. You shall reverence God. God is fully cognizant of everything you do. Do not be like those who forgot God, so he made them forget themselves. These are the wicked. Not equal are the dwellers of the hellfire and the dwellers of paradise. The dwellers of paradise are the winners. Our deeds today impact our future. So, both in this world and in the hereafter. So, we should be conscious of how our actions will be accounted for on the day of judgment. And when we evaluate ourselves, we should let things in our life that are not Quranic go away. So now that we have time here in this world, we can correct ourselves. And also, not just actions, we should avoid even bad thoughts for our own good. So God says in the Quran that whether you declare your innermost thoughts or keep them hidden, God holds you responsible for them. So this verse is actually talking about like not harboring any bad thoughts. God says you will be responsible for them also. So these verses are also talking about forgetting God. You know, we always say that we should remember God in every moment. So the opposite of this would be forgetting God. So if someone forgets God, why does God help him? God says these people are wicked. If someone consciously thinks about God and remember Him and glorify Him, God will help him and make him a righteous person. So this is a reminder of the importance of staying always connected with God. Forgetting God means actually losing our way and becoming disconnected from God. Okay, continue, inshallah. The subtitle says Greatness of the Quran. Verse 21. If we revealed this Quran to a mountain, you would see it trembling, crumbling out of reverence for God. We cite these examples for the people that they may reflect. Like imagine that mountains, which seem to be one of the strongest and most solid parts of nature, would react this way because of the deep respect towards God and the Word of God. So this is actually how great the Quran is. This is because it contains the Word of God. So God speaks through the Quran so that people find the right way. Uh, Even something as strong as a mountain wouldn't be able to withstand the immense power of God's words, as we see in this verse. So this shows how powerful God's message is. It has the ability to move the earth and shake even the most solid things. And also remember that when Moses said, "My Lord, let me look at and see you," and God said to him, "You cannot see me. Look at that mountain. If it stays in its place, then you can see me." You know. And then when God manifested Himself to the mountain, uh, and this caused it to crumble. So it shows that it is impossible to stand God's energy, not just for mountains, but also for our entire universe. And this verse also implies that uh, we should respond to God's message. You know, we should think about it. Do we also feel deep respect towards God when we hear or read the Quran? Uh, do we show reverence for God's words in our hearts and actions? In the Quran, God says that when the Quran is recited, you shall listen to it and take heed that you may attain mercy. So it's there for a reason. Subtitle says God, verse 22. He is the one God, there is no other God besides Him, knower of all secrets and declarations. He is the most gracious, most merciful. He is the one God, there is no other God besides Him, the King, the most sacred, the peace, the most faithful, the supreme, the almighty, the most powerful, the most dignified, God be glorified, far above having partners. He is the one God, the creator, the initiator, the designer. To Him belong the most beautiful names. Glorifying Him is everything in the heavens and the earth. He is the Almighty, most wise. MashaAllah. So there is no other God besides Him. And this is not only a law, but also a proven fact that when we look around, we see that Satan is actually incapable of being God with a small g. Because in his dominion, in Satan's dominion, there are wars, accidents, and all kinds of disasters. So this proves that there cannot be a God besides the one God who is capable of doing everything. And also, it is similar to the law that the Quran is preserved by God. When there is a law, uh, like the law of preservation of the Quran, this law does not exist unless it is violated. So, one God makes sense. And these three verses actually teach us God's qualities, which are essential to know to be redeemed, like uh, like it says, God is the most merciful. So if God is the most merciful, then He never advocates evil. So that means when people say God ordered Abraham to kill his son, we should immediately say that this is a big lie attributed to God, because we know that God is the most merciful and He wouldn't command bad things. And also, here we see God is the most faithful. So that means God's promises are always true, and He always says the truth. That means He doesn't change His mind when He says, like, all the dwellers of hellfire will be in hell forever. Sometimes people may imply that God can change His mind or something like that, but this is not true. This is not Quranic. When God says hell and heaven are forever, we should say we hear and obey. So we can't be more merciful than God and say, well, hell is not forever or something like that, for example. I mean, knowing God's qualities are really important. So, and it should be only based on the Quran, you know. Surah 60, the test, Al-Mumtahina. In the name of God, most gracious, most merciful. O you who believe, you shall not befriend my enemies and your enemies, extending love and friendship to them, even though they have disbelieved in the truth that has come to you. They persecute the messenger and you just because you believe in God, your Lord. If you mobilize to struggle in my cause, seeking my blessings, how can you secretly love them? I am fully aware of everything you conceal and everything you declare. Those among you who do this have indeed strayed off the right path. Whenever they encounter you, they treat you as enemies and hurt you with their hands and tongues. They want you to disbelieve. Your relatives and your money can never help you. On the day of resurrection, He will judge among you. God is seer of everything you do. So, we shouldn't be in close relationships with people who are enemies of God. And even if they appear friendly or kind, when they reject the truth and confess their disbelief, we can't befriend these people anymore. So it is important because when you become close to these people, they can influence your actions. Even if you say, "Well, I will be fine, nothing will happen," or something like that. God knows the heart of people. So even they may appear friendly, they actually want to hurt you. And here God warns us about these people. So knowing who is God's enemies and who is not actually changes everything. If someone mocks your religion and persecutes you and confesses his disbelief, then uh, you should just run for your life. Abraham, an example. Verse 4. A good example has been set for you by Abraham and those with him. They said to their people, we disown you and the idols that you worship besides God. We denounce you, and you will see nothing from us except animosity and hatred until you believe in God alone. However, a mistake was committed by Abraham when he said to his father, I will pray for your forgiveness, but I possess no power to protect you from God. Our Lord, we trust in you and submit to you. To you is the final destiny. And the footnote says, The Arabic word for alone, wahdahu, occurs only 6 times in the Quran. One of them refers to upholding the Quran alone. The reference to God alone occurs in 7, 70, 39, 45, 40, 12, and 84, and Surah 60, verse 4. The sum of these numbers equals 361, or 19 times 90, 19. This emphasizes that the main theme of the Quran is worship God alone. See Appendix 1. And the other footnote says, we can pray for guidance for the idolaters, not forgiveness, since God's law is that idolatry is the only unforgivable offense. So God here explains how we can react to these people. Abraham and his people said that you will see nothing from us except animosity and hatred until you believe in God alone. In the Quran, God also says that Muhammad, the messenger of God, and those with him are harsh and stern against the disbelievers, but kind and compassionate amongst themselves. So uh, that's how we should be. I mean, if someone is proved to be disbeliever, then we are no longer his or her friend. And in this verse, we also learn that we cannot pray forgiveness for idol worshippers. Because if someone dies as an idol worshipper, then God will not forgive him. It is God's law that idolatry is the only unforgivable offense. And by the way, this verse proves that we can't be friendly towards everybody. It is not Quranic that we just go and befriend proven disbelievers or hypocrites. If everybody loves you, something is wrong. So that was the last verse for today. Let's stop here. Thank you all for listening. If you have any comments or questions, please share.
Subhanallah. Thank you, brother.
MashaAllah. Thank you. MashaAllah.
MashaAllah, thank you.
MashaAllah. So, Brother Jafar has a question. He says that in the first verses that you have read, God says that we need to be charitable, even give when ourselves need it. Also, God says in the Quran that when we give, we shouldn't exaggerate. So, where is the line that we need to keep?
Right, mashallah. So, good question. So, I mean, the thing is that obviously, there's no hard and fast rule in terms of like a percentage or anything like that, specifically, but it all depends on our needs and our lifestyle and, what our expenses are, what our needs are and stuff. And so, obviously, uh, it really depends on the situation, your situation, the person's situation. If God says that for immigrants versus people who help them, they give priority to those people who immigrated because they're needy over themselves. But at the same time, God also tells us to give in moderation and doesn't want us to be extravagant. So we just have to keep these rules in mind and remember, like, we're not suffering. Let's say, imagine you have, let's say, children, and your children need food and stuff, and you have enough money to feed them, let's say, and then some immigrant comes and you give them the money that you're supposed to have for to feed your family, and now your family is suffering. So God doesn't want that either. God wants us to be charitable to the point that it doesn't create a hardship for us, and it helps the other people at the same time. It helps us for our salvation and growing our post-retirement account. But doesn't God doesn't want to create a hardship for anybody either. And also God wants us to be appreciative of the things that he provides for us. So just giving it away to someone else while you yourself are deprived in that way is not something God advocates either. So just we have to use our best judgment in those situations. Yeah, I mean, like sometimes you only, let's say you have $10, right? And someone else needs that money, and you also need it, but let's say, for example, in a certain situation, you can wait, for example, maybe for another week or so. So in that situation, yeah, you may need it, but you give it away because the other person is more needy at that point, maybe, right? Or let's say, I mean, let's use an extreme example. Let's say like someone immigrated to you, and it's very cold, and they move to a place and it doesn't have heating, and you only have one heater, and you needed that heater, but you gave it to them because they need heat, and and for you, you can say, okay, well, I can maybe buy one next week or something. Uh, so in that sense, it doesn't really hurt you very much. But at the same time, it shows your compassion towards the needy person where you needed something yourself, but you decided to give it to your brother or sister in that situation. But of course, that doesn't mean, for example, like, we have things in Hadith and stuff where, they say, oh, Omar gave all his wealth and Ali gave half of his wealth and all that stuff. Obviously, that would be extravagant. I think it was Omar and Abu Bakr, right? Not Ali. Anyways, doesn't matter.
Yeah, brother, like you're probably doing bad, like you're not too wealthy, but somebody's probably doing worse than you. And if you're able to help that person without really affecting you, that's how I understand it.
Yeah, mashallah. Also, I think verse 10 is a good reminder, for us to implore God for these things, because as brother Abdullah just shared earlier about how Satan wants to drive a wedge among the believers, and allowing them to harbor hatred against each other, could be a way of dividing and distracting them from remembering God, and making them weaker, obviously. Um, so the prayer to keep our hearts from harboring any hatred, towards those who believed. People who preceded them to the faith, specifically asking God for forgiveness for our brethren who preceded us to the faith, you know, and harboring any hatred, keeping our hearts from harboring any hatred towards those who believe, So I think Satan can play with people's minds in different ways. Obviously, if they're not reverent, and with God, these things will affect them. All right, but I think someone who reverences God understands the value of not harboring any hatred, having love and compassion, having better thoughts about each other. Will be guided. I mean, Satan will, but nevertheless, I mean, Satan does come in various situations. Will try to. Yeah, there's lots of cats. I'm visiting my in-laws, and there's like 7 cats here. So, yeah. So I mean, Satan will come in different ways and try to, make people hate each other, like try to, whisper certain things, cause people to have like suspicion and things like that. So it's really important for the believers, to acknowledge that Satan is always trying to do things like that, and we should implore God also for this, that he doesn't allow Satan to come in and do these things between us, because I think in another one of the Quran studies, the Messenger of the Covenant talked about it in more detail, and how Satan will even use that to claim against you. Like, he can drive a wedge between you and another believer, and then if he can't get you in any other way, and he gets you through this way, then he will go and make a claim against you, saying that this person is not following your laws, and Satan's claim will be granted. So that's why, in that Quran study, he says, so let's treat each other like we're meeting each other now for the first time. Like, we have no grudges against each other for anything that may have happened, let's say, recently or in the past. So we just let go of whatever it is that we may have been harboring against each other.
Yes, mashallah.
Subhanallah, brother, correct.
So, mashallah, I mean, I also wanted to make a comment on some of these other verses about hypocrites. God also obviously, wants us to be educated about the hypocrites and their schemes and how they operate. God tells us here that you strike more terror in their hearts than their fear of God. Which is hard to, which I was going to say, it's hard to comprehend. And God says here, this is because there are people who do not comprehend. So they are the people who cannot comprehend, like why on earth would you fear, the people? How? Why on earth would the hypocrites fear the believers more than their fear of God? Because I mean, they don't believe that they will be held accountable. They think that God can't do anything. Like, why would you have fear of people around you who are, infallible human beings who cannot do anything and not be afraid of God? I mean, instead they're afraid of people, and and um, and that's why they fight. They don't fight with you unless and well you live things. Um, I mean, this again is, I mean, they look like they're united, like, right? Because you can see always hypocrites and disbelievers always bragging about their numbers because they say they're in the majority, which they, uh, oftentimes are. And so when you perceive that from the outside, it appears as if these people are united because they're all attacking you together. But God says all their hearts are divided. And even though they may appear to be united and everything, I mean, they're afraid. And so, I mean, I think knowing that should give comfort to the believers when they're faced with situations where it appears like, they have a big opposition against them of hypocrites or disbelievers, that, they may feel uh, some sort of, I mean, I don't, some sort of an affliction or something that these people can afflict them. But God says they cannot do anything beyond insulting you the most. They will insult you a lot, and maybe they even might scheme against you. But if you maintain, the righteous works that God tells you to do, maintain righteousness. All their schemings, everything will be nullified, and you don't have to really consider anything about them. Like there could be many situations, many factors. For example, I mean, you might know these people in real life, and you might be afraid. Oh, this person will say something. I mean, I'm just making things up. Like, let's say, he may make something with the government. He may get you arrested. He may get you deported, or he may, get you to be killed by some kind of mob or whatever. There could be so many things like that, in a person's mind when you have a person who's an enemy who really hates you to this level. But God says we don't have to be afraid at all of anything with these people. I mean, they're just like standing logs. I mean, they're the ones obviously who have to be afraid because they're hypocrites. They're not with God. They're not even united amongst themselves. So it's important to know these dynamics. I guess God wants us because that's the only reason why these verses God is teaching us, right, about how these people are and what it's really like to be faced with these people.
Yeah, it's a good point. Think back like to the verse of or the part where the angels told Lot, how these people cannot touch you. So even
Hmm.
like
Hmm.
Satan will try to get us, and he'll work very hard on this too. I think because he's not going to worry about doing this to other people. That's just like I guess they're just naturally doing
Hmm.
that. But towards the believers, he'll try to put uh, fearing us or say, oh, this person has some type of power to do this. But I mean, I guess what helps me in situations and stuff, or like catch myself or this or that, is like I look, like I remember God's running everything, and I tell myself like, okay, this person is literally being controlled by God. It doesn't violate their free will, but it's like the verses in the Quran that says how it was not you who threw, it was God who threw, but He gives
Mm-hmm.
us a chance to earn credit. Like this, I mean, I hope this isn't the wrong thing to say. Maybe it is, but it's almost like you can almost look at people like as robotic in a sense, but God forgive
Mm-hmm.
me, that's not the right way. But it's in the sense of like how people are making their decision really to be with God or be with Satan, and then God takes care of the rest. So He can, um, you know, protect us. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, the devil always
Yeah, I mean,
tries
if
to
you
get
look
us
at.
to attribute some type of power to, and that's
Mm-hmm.
it's like put fear in us or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, if you look at it like, it's almost like puppets. When you see
Yeah,
puppets,
exactly.
puppets don't have anything of their own. They're just puppets
Right.
that be controlled by another entity.
Yeah,
And it's the same
exactly.
way. I mean, everything is in accordance with God's will. You're never going to be afraid of a puppet shooting you.
Right. Yeah.
Unless it's
Yeah.
like Chucky or something. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, like, mashallah,
Just kidding.
I think I told you about this. I'm not gonna go into detail at all, but I had some interesting experiences years ago, and then I think that like looking back on a few different occasions, uh, it like helps me to. I didn't know what it was happening at the time, but it helps me to understand like we're not really doing anything, even if we think we are. You know. But yeah, that's good points and stuff.
Subhanallah, brother. But as believers as well, it's a blessing, because we've talked before, that we talk about this before. It's the ultimate freedom, knowing that God controls everything and being in the right path, because that's
Mm-hmm.
the only reason why we're here. You know, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, what do you guys think about verse 21, 59, 21 about the greatness of the Quran? It says if you're related to a mountain.
Yeah, I think I guess I'll look at that as like um well, if anybody else has any thoughts, maybe I'm gonna think about that a little more.
And Subhan, just a blessing, for have for God bless thank God, for God blessing us with the guidance and with the truth, so um we could grow our souls, and stay in the right path, and um grow with the information God has given us, to protect ourselves and to stay close to God, and it gives us an example how great, of a blessing um, having God's word is. Subhanallah.
Yeah, mashallah, good uh thought on that.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like it's I think maybe because the mountain Like this is something from the Lord of the universe, but most people, I mean, or even people from other faiths or disbelievers don't see it as that, you know. But imagine having like a book from the Lord of the heavens and the earth, and all the profound wisdom and help and guidance, and like it says, it's a beacon of mercy. And I mean, it contains everything, you know, like all of God's names or attributes, the 99 names, and um,
I think also the verse 21. Maybe God want to tell us about the amount of wisdom and knowledge that we have in the Quran that we're missing out. God is giving us a comparison here with a mountain, and we know the mountain is huge in size, and God is comparing us to something huge in size. And God is showing us that if this Quran was given to the mountain, it will crumble. While it's given to us, who are much smaller in size and strength and physical strength, yet we don't appreciate what we have in our hand, which
Exactly.
is indication from Allah, from God, that we're not really fully comprehending and appreciating what God is providing us in the message in the Quran itself. So I think that's a big reminder that we have a lot to learn and know about the Quran and what's in the Quran for us to understand, comprehend, and make it part of our life. So that's what I understand
Yeah,
from it, the
exactly.
wisdom.
Yeah.
yeah, that's
Yeah, I mean,
good.
imagine. Yeah, go ahead, brother.
No, I was just gonna say that's a great explanation. That makes sense.
hmm Yeah, I mean, when you think about how enormous some of these mountains are, right? How powerful these mountains are. God also says, like, for example, walk humbly, lower your voice, and you cannot be as tall as the mountains. You cannot bore through the earth. I mean, another example with the mountains, and so the mountains. If you think about it, like really, if there's any creature on earth, like I would think that should be have some sort of like arrogance about them, should be the mountains in the sense of how big and strong they are. They're really tall and heavy. They're submitters. There's nothing more powerful than a mountain as a submitter on earth, right? um, the biggest uh, earth itself is a submitter, but if you look on the earth, the biggest submitter you can think of is a mountain. Like you have some of these mountains that go like thousands and thousands of feet high, and they don't have. I mean, they have the reverence to, if they really comprehend and the Quran, like the greatness of the Quran, it would make them crumble out of reverence. I mean, obviously God made them differently, so they're not doing that. But it's great enough that it could cause a mountain to crumble, um, and we should think about that. Like people have really undervalued the Quran for centuries, but even in submission, as we see, God has given us the Quran, and how the Quran is still being undervalued. Like people are still going to other sources besides the Quran to try to find information, like ridiculous stuff we've talked about before, right? And we have something so great from God that is unaltered and proven. I mean, God has given us all the details of everything that we need. I mean, we read about today about the example of Abraham. His example that you're supposed to follow is in the Quran. I mean, the example. I mean, what's the difference between a Muhammadan who's following the example of Muhammad versus a so-called submitter who's following the example of Abraham? now, because God says, follow the example of Abraham. That's literally what some of these people are saying, that because God says, we have to follow the religion of Abraham, so we're going to follow every hearsay in the name of Abraham from the previous scriptures. And as we know, the previous scriptures, the universally accepted, if you want to use the word universally, that God ordered Abraham to kill his son, right? And if you want to go by that principle, then you might as well accept that. And if you have those thoughts, you're never going to go to paradise. Just having that thought alone. So having the Quran is, I mean, obviously, we cannot comprehend or put in words. Obviously, we will know the true, appreciate the true value in the hereafter when we see people who were guided by the Quran and who were saved by the Quran, on that day, and how miserable hell is, and how God guided them and they were saved, all by virtue of God sending His word to us, so that for those who followed, I mean, obviously will help them, right? So, but these verses are there as a reminder for us to understand the value of the message that we have been given.
Yeah, mashallah.
MashaAllah, right, brother?
Yeah, it also shows the intelligence, I think, of these creatures too. How they made the more intelligent decision in the first place, and then you can see it kind of be reflected on, that verse.
Mm-hmm.
I think chapter 17, verse 9 is a good example about the Quran. Chapter 17, verse 9. 17, verse 9. The title says, Quran, our means to salvation. This Quran guides to the best path and brings good news to the believers who lead a righteous life, that they have a deserved that they have deserved a great recompense. So that's a
Mm-hmm.
reminder from us about
Mm-hmm.
the Quran, and reminder, and also like a promise for the believers.
Mm-hmm.
And also in the next verse, it's a warning for the non-believers. 17:10. As for those who disbelieve in the hereafter, we have prepared for them a painful retribution. But yes, so the Quran is our way for salvation, to worship God alone and to know how to worship Him and be righteous in our life. So yeah, alhamdulillah, mashallah, that's the way we should be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and also, we can see how God's attributes are mentioned in verse 22, 23, and 24, to help us remember God with these beautiful names, to glorify Him, with these names, so we can grow our souls. And I mean, all of these attributes, really, if we think about them, subhanAllah, I mean, they're beautiful. The most sacred, the peace, the most faithful, the supreme, the most signified, the initiator, the creator, the designer. So God wants us to remember Him by these names, to acknowledge them, to glorify God, so we can feed our souls. Obviously, as we know, God doesn't need any praise. If we never thought about God, it wouldn't get it wouldn't hurt God in the least, but God knows that it's us who need nourishment for our souls. It's us who are in trouble, that we need to come back to God and save ourselves. We have wronged our own souls. And so these verses are reminders for us about God's attributes, for us to remember Him. And these are beautiful, especially, also if you even read them in Arabic, they're just as beautiful, if not more. And I mean, um, just something for us to, I think, draw inspiration from when we remember God, whenever we glorify God, to call Him with these names.
Yeah, mashallah. I mean, I want to add also that we came across one verse today, which is chapter 59, 24. But I've done research about this before. It's the names of Allah, the name of God, has been mentioned four times in the Quran. The first one is in chapter 7, 180. To God
Hmm.
belongs the most beautiful names. Call upon Him there
Hmm.
within and disregard those who distort His names. They will be requited for their sins. That's the first verse. The second one is in chapter 17, verse 110. Say, call Him God or call Him most gracious. Whichever name you use, to Him belong the best names. This is the second time when mentioned about the God names. And the third time is in chapter 20, verse 8. God, there is no other God beside Him. To Him belong the most beautiful names. So these are three verses where
Hmm.
God, we talks about the names of God, the names of Allah, God, and
Hmm.
in addition to today's
Hmm.
verse, yes, of course, this is Allah will not mention this unless we are meant to reflect, learn about it, and understand and
Hmm.
glorify Allah, God, in this way, using His names and attributes.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, mashallah, of course, that's important for us to do that.
Mashallah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I
mashallah.
think
Tell me about that stuff.
I,
Oh, I'm sorry, brother.
mm, which I think there even might be a mathematical correlation with these surah and the verse numbers where this is mentioned. It'd be interesting to see.
Is there a way to share a photo on the or not?
You can share your screen. Yeah. Um,
Um,
if you are if you're looking at something, you can share your screen easily from your app, from the app.
okay, no, I've just put I put the four verses next to each other. That's it. So.
Uh-huh. Yeah, you can share them on WhatsApp also, the
Oh yeah,
pictures.
I'll do that inshallah.
Yeah, got one.
Yeah, inshallah.
Yeah, also I think going to Surah 60 about the test, I mean it's important that we understand the title of the chapter is the test, right? And the test is difficult because it talks about befriending befriending the enemies, so you're tested with these situations where you have people. They could be people in your family, they could be people in your other areas like your business, your environment, your school, whatever. People that you may have to deal with uh, for anything or not, either way. There are people that you're tested with, as it talks about in other verses, the spouses of the believers, the parents, the children. It can be any of these things. And, you can have people that could be, part of this category. Now, these are talking about God's enemies, where you could be extending love and friendship to these people. And I think, mashallah, as brother Abdullah shared, like, it doesn't matter. Some of them, sometimes, I mean, there are some people that promote this ideology that, if they're sweet talking to you, that you can befriend them, which is, I think it's very naive and stupid to think that, because, imagine telling a child that, you can trust it's like telling a child you can trust a stranger and go with him. If someone comes and offers you candy and wants to tell you to take you to the park or something, you should go with them. But only if he says, I'm going to kidnap you and stuff like that, you shouldn't go. So obviously, anybody who's coming with this kind of an agenda against you, who's your enemy, if he's clever, he's going to be a sweet talker rather than someone who's going to immediately make you respond in a way that your guards go up right away. So, and we know how that's how Satan works, right? When Satan came to dupe Adam and Eve, he didn't he didn't come and tell them straight away, like, "Hey, I'm your enemy, and you listen to me so I can mislead you and disobey God." He came very tactfully and promised them that he was giving them good advice, and made up a lie in a very deceptive manner, and that's how the hypocrites can be. And in this situation, obviously, people think that some people would think that, no, it's only about people who are insulting you and attacking your religion and mocking you and ridiculing you. But those are the people that you will not be befriending in the first place. How can you offer love and friendship to those people in the first place? That wouldn't even make sense. People who are hostile towards you can't even befriend them if you wanted to, you know. But the people you end up befriending or loving secretly are the people that will pretend to be your friends, people who will pretend to be nice and kind, and you offer them love and friendship because of that, of someone who is a disbeliever or a hypocrite, who is just angry and upset and, has fought you because of religion. In that sense, that's already done with. Like, how would you even, like, logically speaking, how would you even love that person and befriend that person? That doesn't work. But it would work for people who want to be friends with you at that point, despite the things, despite the differences. They want to be friends and they want to be quote unquote united with you. Is where I think the test really comes, because that's what makes it hard, right? Uh, and the Master of the Covenant talks about, for example, how the hypocrites, they can especially be kind and loving people. And he talks about how we may fall in love with them, and this makes it a difficult test. But the example of Abraham, we have, the example of Abraham is um, a very good example in the sense that it's not talking about, let's say, your co-workers or whatever. It's talking about his own family, like his own father. And yet, we saw in the past, for example, people talking about how you can't do that with your own parents. To relationships, they're just the same as anybody else. Obviously, you're supposed to honor them, generally speaking. But when they fall in this category, then it doesn't matter if they're your parents or your siblings or who else, ever else. You are supposed to treat them based on God's system. And I think the verses are very logical in the sense of, God talking about, uh, these people cannot help you at all against God in any way. So even if you're kind to them, you cannot help them in any way. Sorry, John, I didn't understand. Oh, you just cut out. Okay. All right. Is it okay now? Okay, perfect. Yeah, so I think we have to we have to know that these categories, they don't discriminate whether a person's your father or a parents or not. In under any situation, I mean, there could be people who are God's enemies. Anybody who's a disbeliever who has made a decision to side with Satan, and we know that they're hopelessly stuck in that situation. They have no hope for themselves, and you don't see that they will ever change their mind. They would go in that category. Now, I mean, I wanted to say about this, based on some recent discussions, you have some obvious categories in this situation. For example, you could have hypocrites where, someone will say, like, okay, I don't believe this and this, right? And you talk to them, and they're still nice to you, whatever, but they say they don't believe in certain things. Let's say someone says, "Hey, I don't believe that circumcision is not part of religion." Let's say, right? And there's someone in that category, and you've come to the decision that there's no hope for this person, no matter what you've said. You've exhausted all the proofs, everything. This person will not budge, and they're blocked. So to me, like, that seems like a very easy decision, in the sense of being able to write them off as someone who's an enemy of God, because they have made a stand in the opposition and actively decided not to pursue this. Whether they want to kill you or not, that's besides the point. Even if they don't want to kill you and they say they love you, you're still not supposed to befriend such people, right? But there's another situation where, let's say, you may have people in your family or relatives or whatever, where you give them the message, you give them the information, and they don't oppose you in any way. you know they're seemingly accepting everything, but you see that things are not really working out in that direction. Like, let's say, if you've talked about the mathematical miracle and the prayers and all these things, but they haven't really shown any opposition to you. At the same time, maybe they didn't show the enthusiasm that you were expecting, and their life might not be going in the right direction either. But they're kind of, it becomes a very difficult situation. Like, thinking about it objectively from, like, a certain case, where someone is not opposing anything you're telling them. They're accepting, or they're listening. At the same time, they're not doing everything, of course, right? But their life is miserable, and but they haven't opposed in any way. They haven't. So in that situation, even though you may feel like you don't have hope for them, but they're not showing from their actions that they're hopeless, in the sense that they're not opposing the truth in any way. They're not deciding to take the opposition side and say, no, I'm not going to believe this, I'm not going to follow this. So I think in those situations, like, we just probably should be cautious, you know um, and because we don't have to rush to make a decision in those situations. Other situations might be more obvious. Yeah, when someone says, I don't believe this, or this is a messenger's own opinion or whatever, it's very easy to write that person off, to see whether they're stuck or not. You can tell easily. But someone who says that, okay, that makes sense, that looks good, I will look more into it, and is kind and courteous at that point, it becomes very difficult, for at least my own understanding, to think that even though the situation looks hopeless, I can't say that this person is hopeless. I don't know if that making sense.
Um, yeah, mashallah, you explained it nicely. I think the dilemma is in situations where the people we're talking about are related to you, especially the parents, where we have a direct command by God, Allah, to be good to your parents. And if both parents are clear and open rejectors of the message, and they clearly does not want to follow, and to the point where you can say they're like hopeless, just like when Abraham realized this about his father. So that's the biggest dilemma that anybody can face is parents, especially parents, because there's two different. We have one verse on one hand where God tells clearly to be good to them, but at the same time, we're also being told to be like stay away from those who are disbelievers. So maybe if you can elaborate on this point.
Sorry, which point?
Dealing with parents who are
Yeah.
disbelievers.
So I mean, I think the commandment that God tells us to be to respect and honor our parents, that stands independently. Like you have to be, generally speaking, kind to your parents and honor them, right? That's separate. But when it comes to being God's enemy or not, that doesn't put them in that verse itself, or those verses do not put them in a special category because of that, right? But the thing is, they have to be, you have to respect them and honor them. If they tell you to, let's say, worship idols, God says don't listen to them, but treat them with kindness. So those are the people that you woo them, that you respect them, either way, right? But then you have parents that decided that they're not going to follow, and they've made it clear to you that they're not going to follow, like in the fact, like, say, if you bring up the message, they get upset. Those are the people that are showing clear signs that they're in the opposition. But someone who's listening to you, understanding, but simply not doing it, with actions, I'm saying those people fall in a different category where, even though their situation may look hopeless, and it might as well be, it doesn't put us in a position to write them off just because um, we don't see them acting on everything we're telling them. Like, for example, some parents may have certain beliefs, and you talk to them about submission and worshiping God alone, and they listen. They participate in the discussion with you. They're not stopping you. They're not opposing you. But then they're not doing anything with it either. So they're kind of in that category where they still have hope in that sense, right? I mean, even they might be in their last year in this world, let's say, uh, you know, and not much is going to change within 1 year or 2 years, anyways. But they're not in that category where they have decided to take on the opposition, you know. So I'm thinking, like,
Right, but
just
I
thinking
just
out
want to say
loud, that
this, that that's what makes it tricky, and I think what you were saying earlier, because you won't, if somebody could be directly opposing God, and then they'll tell you even things about, I don't know, I guess maybe it's an individual basis, which makes it difficult, but they're not, they're not going to make it known to you, but like they're the most ardent enemies, because like, I mean, I think this
Mhm.
helps knowing how well you know this person. I mean, from
Right.
birth to death, and you know them so
Yeah.
well. Like, I mean, maybe
Hmm.
vice versa, but
Hmm.
it's like you know what's in their hearts,
Hmm.
and I think, and then like what they're showing on the outside is like very contradictory, and that's what I think makes these, like you were
Hmm.
saying, makes these decisions difficult. But like you
Hmm.
said too, we have to continue to like keep the door open in a sense, because I mean, just
Hmm.
like I think about it like this, like what if I was this person, like
Hmm.
I would want my daughter or son or nephew or whatever the case may be, to do the same for me and like continue to like push me even if I need to nudge me and like don't give up on me, like beat me up, like knock me on the head, get it through to me instead of throwing in the towel early. Because I know in retrospect I would look back like, oh, thank God, like you had to hit me a few times, like, hey, pull
Yeah,
me,
not
you know,
literally though.
shake me, yeah, not literally, but like shake me, like, hey, like
We
wake
have
up,
to
you
make
know,
it clear.
right. Yeah, I shouldn't have
Yeah,
said
yeah.
that. Maybe like
No,
shake
no.
it. But yeah, not literally. That's good clarification. But yeah, like
Yeah.
you would want that for yourself, like 'cause you may not see it at the time, but in retrospect, if like I'm thinking if I was them, I would like be enthralled, like if they, So I think like we have to,
Yeah,
be
exactly.
cautious,
Yeah.
like before
Yeah.
making hasty decisions.
Yeah, because everybody doesn't fall in that category either, I mean, they don't have to be in the extreme category in the sense of, yeah, I mean, um, someone is an enemy in the sense of a disbeliever, but if they haven't shown their opposition, you don't necessarily have the burden before they leave this world. Like you have to put them in that category. Like it's not like you have a timer, like say, no, John, like before this person dies, you have to, like decide this or that either. Like okay, if they're in that position, especially parents, it becomes challenging because you don't understand what's going on in their head. I mean, they might be old, they might have other scenarios, issues, that you may or may not be aware of, but like it just becomes very convoluted in that situation to me. And it seems like doesn't seem right, to put them in that same category. If I mean, and it's a whole different story, of course, if they showed even a little bit of opposition, even if they showed a tiny bit of opposition, even with one thing, like let's say like the contact prayers,
Yeah.
you know,
But
to say
that's the
that
thing. They
no,
harbor these oppositions. Like a person can harbor them, and that's what makes them the
right,
most sneaky, and I think the most deadly and dangerous people. And
right,
what I've gone through is like they harbor opposition, and then they secretly
hmm,
agree with you, and then like alone they completely
they don't,
disbelieve it, and
hmm,
they'll smooth talk you, sweet talk you, sugar talk you, just to.
hmm,
And I mean, them because like then they're.
hmm,
It's like they yeah, but
right. I can understand what you're saying. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
like
Yeah,
brother.
so I mean that's why the messenger says that you are the best person to make that decision.
Yeah,
Um,
and
like coming from the outside, someone else looking, who doesn't know this person and all those dynamics, like will not know. But for example, if they're your parents, you would know because you know them better than I do, or whoever it is, that is related to them will know them, and it's for them anyways, right, to make that decision. So they will be the best judge um, on that situation, right?
right, mashallah.
Yeah.
Yeah, may God help us all, not to make the right decision.
Hmm.
I think
Hmm.
patience and I
Hmm.
think too, it's like kind of like the messenger. I mean, this is unrelated, but like how he just uses the frame, like the evidence, talking about the mathematical miracle, about how the evidence stacks upon the evidence, like it's irrefutable.
Hmm.
Like the evidence
Hmm.
is piling up, the cat's out of the bag. So I think we could
Hmm.
maybe apply that same type of mindset or
Hmm.
thinking when it comes to such
Hmm.
big and important decisions, because we don't want to let
Yeah.
Satan like victimize us
Hmm.
or anything,
Hmm.
or make a claim on us, for
Hmm.
either way.
Hmm.
I think um, when Brother Salman talked about parents, um, yes, it's true that we are probably understand our parents more than anybody else. Like each person will have different circumstances. But if you know that both parents are openly against your belief, openly they want to be polytheists, regardless to what you say, they're rejecting the truth. Then you're reaching a point like Prophet Abraham, where he had to abandon his father. I can't remember the verse number, but if you look at Quran, that shows a conversation between Abraham and his father, where he was talking to him very kindly, and his response from the father was very harsh. And then another verse where God says about that Abraham abandoned his father when he knew that he is the enemy of God. So I think this is a difficult call that we have to make at some point, especially like the person can decide from their own based on his knowledge of his parents. Yes, we know that they could be old, but we know them long enough to understand whether they are willing to accept, or there's a chance of accepting, or they are rejectors. Sometimes you reach a point where you know that they are going to reject, open rejection. So that's, we cannot unfortunately sugarcoat that. Yeah, mashallah, brother Abdullah put the verse, I think, here. 1942. Our Father. Yes, that's mashallah very good. These are the conversation between Prophet Abraham and his father. But this is like shows how Abraham was talking to his father in a very kind way, and while his father was very aggressive to him. We can say, "Oh my father, I have received," calling him, "Oh my father," while his father's response was more like harsher to him than. So this is the verse I was talking about where Prophet Abraham was talking kindly to his father, but there's another verse where Prophet Abraham abandoned his father when he knew that there is no hope in him becoming a worshiping Allah. So yeah, I just wanted to add this point. The thing that maybe each one of us might be going to this. I mean, I'm talking from my own personal experience, and I know other submitter who's going through the same or similar experience. Could be parents, some could be like a spouse, which is more complicated even. But it's something that is we all have to go through, and we all have to have some idea how to deal with it.
Yeah, I
I'm just
mean,
trying.
his father told him if he doesn't stop, that he will stone him. He was
Yeah,
very. But in this time, that's not gonna like. Your parents are not gonna. This was like in ancient times. So now, like, really, probably what happened is that they would just oppose you. Like just like yeah, like I don't believe. Like in that kind of way. You know.
yeah,
It kind
yeah,
of
but
falls in the same category. I see it.
yeah, I mean, of course, I mean, stoning in the olden age is like the highest form of when they say stone you. If you put stoning at that time to our modern day, it reflects a higher state of disrespect and higher state of um, punishment for somebody. If I'm going to stone you, you see. So this shows what sort of level that how Abraham's father was treating his son. Two different levels. While Abraham was very kind and thoughtful and gentle with him, his father was complete opposite.
Yeah, and people around his father too. They try to burn him. And God saved them from that. He was supposed, to like the limits. Like, and we could say now, like if it's your parents and the parent is telling you like just opposing you, like you see no hope, and they're just saying, I don't believe, and it's being harsh to you, you that's why God says that Abraham's an example. We do the same, and we
Yeah,
don't associate ourselves with them.
exactly. I mean, the verse I was trying to refer to, just to confirm what you just said about, is in chapter 9. I mean, there's a couple of verses, like in chapter 9, 9:11. Where is it? I'm just looking for it. Yes, 9:114. The only reason Abraham asked forgiveness for his father was that he had promised him to do so. But as soon as he realized that he was an enemy of God, he disowned him. Abraham was extremely kind, clement. So shows that Allah described him as, when Abraham realized that his father is the enemy of God, he disowned him. And just to show that this is not the normal character of Prophet Abraham, God says Abraham was extremely kind and clement. So it shows that, I mean, that's my understanding, that you come to a point where you have to be kind to them until that you reach a threshold or a point that, okay, enough is enough. You've had your chance. That's it. I have to change my position. I mean, God knows best, but this is what I understand. This is my experience and other experience. And it's a dilemma. That's what I'm trying to ask and get other people's opinion to see what other people experience from these things in their own life also.
All right. So, subhanallah, Brother Suleiman. The white cat was very curious. What's going on? Inshallah. Yeah, Brother John also, like Brother John was saying how these people could be like very sneaky and like hold back, and this is like the way they will scheme against you. But I feel like if you keep talking to them and like if they're close, if they're your parents, I think like they will probably end up slipping up. God says in the Quran, God exposes these people, so they will probably say something, they're not gonna, I feel like they won't be able to like be that good. You know what I'm trying to say, Brother Suleiman? Or
Sorry, you got distracted.
as how or if any other brothers heard me or sister. Well, I was saying that how John was saying that these people hold back, like they're very sneaky, and this is like a certain way that it will scheme against you. And I was saying, like, if you know them, like if they're your parents, you're very close to them and you're talking to them, constantly, I'm pretty sure like they will end up exposing themselves, like they're not that good, they will end up giving some certain, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's what makes it difficult. I think it ties in like to hypocrisy, because if you have this situation, I mean, like it's easy if like they just make it known to you, like, oh, I don't like you, I'm gonna kill you, or they don't even have to say I'm gonna kill you, but they can still oppose you. But what makes it difficult is like the most ardent enemies, God knows what's in their hearts, and you have that same feeling, and like because of what they've shown to you, but then they go and contradict themselves, and then it's a back and forth, and eventually it's like, okay, well, who am I dealing with, like, and that's what makes, I guess, a hypocrite, because I mean, and then I think too, if we apply these verses to the Quran, if they match, if they fit the ticket, that's another telltale indicator. And I mean, it's very eerie. Like, I think having to go through something like this, or having to, I guess, but anyway.
No, I understand. I mean, I'm in a similar position where your parents might one day say, okay, we accept what you say makes sense. The next day or within a few hours, they completely flip and change, and they start mentioning Prophet Muhammad and his family, etc. They might show you one face, but on the next day they change their position.
Yeah. I mean, that's like, and even though that's like, yeah, because then they tell you like, oh, and then you might think that there's some restored hope, but I think there's other signs that you can get from God, like signs or something, just. But I mean, I think it's really, like the messenger said, it's a case by case basis, like, because how well you know this person, and you have to, it's a judgment call. But it's good to talk about this with other brothers and sisters, so we don't hastily make the wrong decision, but we don't also not do the opposite, So yeah, it's a case by case,
Yeah,
but we have
that's
the principles,
I think that's the exact answer, case by case, and we have to like discuss with other brothers and sisters to hear from them, get opinion, and get a consultation. And each of us will have different experience, understanding, and maybe I might not have the answer, but you might have the answer. You might answer something that might be relevant to me, and I have an answer that's relevant to you. So, yeah, inshallah, may God make it easy for us to know the truth and follow it.
Inshallah.
All right. Are there any other comments or questions from anyone before we end the study, God willing?
No, inshallah, I think I'm okay. Inshallah, I don't know about the other brothers.
All right. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Brother Abdullah, for leading the study. God willing, our next English Quran study would be on Wednesday at 9:30 a.m. Pacific time. God bless you all. Assalamu alaikum.